three measurements in throughput world have given us. We can use two of these three to come down to one simple measurement of productivity. There are 20, 30 definitions of productivity. Many times we confuse it with profitability. Many times we say we have increased the rate of output and we say we have increased productivity. How have you measured your productivity? How do you know your productivity has gone up? Do you think you have increased the productivity of the whole plant? But this is how we have been talking, because the cost world measurements do not allow us to see the effect of our decisions on the measurements that we use for company performance. In the throughput world, we use a measure of productivity in very simple way. It's nothing but all the money that I was able to make by spending all the money that I did. That means total throughput divided by total operating expenses for the period. If this equation is more than 1, at least you can be rest assured that you're not going to make a loss. All that the money that is coming in within the company is equal to all the money that I'm spending to run this company. Now, like I said earlier, that manufacturing organizations have an interplay of three core elements: labor, material and capital. In throughput world, all these three things are measured in one simple formula of productivity. So if you have saved money in material and increased your labor cost or your capital cost, all of it gets summed up here. But not only this, you can take this measurement and use it in your day-to-day operations. That means the impact of one can be felt on the second. Now what is it telling us? That certainly I am not treating each department as independent but as dependent. What does that mean? It means that if true improvements in productivity have to be met, I need to have all departments working in a synchronized way. If this synchronization is not there, you can see the productivity figures not going up. If you don't sell, the productivity figures will not go up, because they are based on true selling, throughput divided by operating expense for the period. Productivity. Let's spend some more time on this measurement. Now we know throughput is the rate at which a company makes money. That means per unit time, and the time could be week, month or quarter. This throughput divided by operating expense for the period. As I said earlier, what is operating expense? Operating expense has a very important element inside it called rejections. So I have managed to get a lot of throughput, but I have also increased rejections. What happened? The productivity is not very high. The second aspect is the top and the bottom, both of them are money. In conventional productivity, we said earlier I was getting 25 pieces an hour and now I am getting 35 pieces an hour. My productivity has gone up. Yes, your rate of output has gone up, but does this rate of output translate into you making money? If it does not, then this is again a local optima. You might have increased the number of pieces, but is there a control on your operating expense? you might be consuming less electricity. You may say that if I make it faster, then I can shut off my machine. So I will consume less resources. And the moment there is a less and there is an increase in number, the assumption is that I have become more productive. Now this is again not giving a true picture of what is happening to the company. And if it doesn't, what do? We put 2 or 3 more layers on this measurement so that we are able to now see our productivity from 3 to 4 more angles. However, in throughput world, it's extremely simple. The throughput that the company was able to generate divided by operating expense. And when I say operating expense, I'm not looking at direct, indirect, anything. Anything and everything that goes inside gets plugged in. Now suddenly, the marketing department also has an impact on the productivity of the company. How come? Because the marketing department said, listen, I'm going to attend this particular exhibition so that I can get more orders. The moment a person goes to attend an exhibition, or let's say international exhibition, the expense of this travel is booked. Now, by doing this, the kind of approach you're taking to management is simple. Nobody works alone. If the marketing department does not show an increase in throughput in the near term, your cash flow is hampered. What is the productivity of an organization where you're sitting and waiting for the order to come 6 months later? The same way my production was working earlier, where they produced and kept it in FG and said, listen, I have done my production, my job is over. All these 3 elements of productivity that we were talking earlier, the capital productivity, the material productivity and the labor productivity, do not still give a great handle in managing a company as the productivity measured in throughput world. There can be more aspects to this. The job is not to measure month on month and to maintain it. The job is that we have to constantly keep improving the productivity. The trend is more important than the figure. If I keep reducing my operating expense and in trying to do so, I cut some productive capacity, how do I know I've made the error? If that error has been made in my decision making, it will immediately impact my throughput. And the moment there is a drop in throughput, I know that this is the maximum limit to which I can cut my operating expense. In other words, in throughput world, the priority is to first increase throughput. Now let's start working that. I'm going to keep my operating expense same. Now my job is to do more in the same. That means I should be able to generate more throughput with the same operating expense. What do you go tell people? Please only make things that we can sell, because throughput is only generated after you sell a thing. So if you don't have things to sell, don't make. Most likely the operating expense will be going down. So a decision on the throughput side is also impacting operating expense. What else is throughput? If you make it faster and I have ample orders, I should be able to send it out much earlier and book my throughput. What else can I do? I can start looking at the list of my products and say, these are the ones that give me more throughput per unit time than others. So let me try and give priority to the ones which give me more throughput per unit time. Doing this, I'm not increasing my expenses at all. I have to manufacture those products any which way. All these things are now forcing me to start making a call on to make the correct product in the right amount at the right time. If I make something before time, I have incurred the operating expense but not booked the throughput. What does it show? It shows on my productivity. Let's look at another aspect of this. I have bought excessive raw material and I don't consume it. Where does it show? It shows on my investment, not on my productivity, because I have not incurred any expense for it. If there is a very frequent breakdown, where did it show? It shows on my operating expense as well as on throughput. How much of money should be spent on it? Very simple. If this breakdown is causing a drop in throughput, everybody knows that if there is a breakdown, we have not sold something. But the impact as shown by my productivity measure is slightly more because it is also increasing my operating expense. The true impact of breakdown is now properly understood by looking at this productivity figure. Is this a new measure? No, it is just a new way of looking at just the three measures we had developed in the throughput world. And those were throughput, investment or inventory, and operating expense. Did I require anything else? No, but if it is the cost world, I would actually need to develop 2 to 3 more special measurements, hoping that if this figure goes up, my company performance will go up. But in the throughput world, we are very clear that if my throughput goes up, my profit goes up while keeping the investment and operating expense constant. But if I can't control my investment and operating expense constant, my profit is going to go down a bit, or the rate of increase of profit will be not as much. And why it didn't happen is again put in front of me. Let's look at another way how these measurements simplify our behavior. Throughput, investment and operating expense. All these are measured in rupees. Don't you think it's easier to now relate rupee to rupee? If I break it further down and start saying, oh, my consumption of oil or consumable per unit is this, per number of my piece is this, again it will be tough for us to relate it to the money that we are making. So these three measures, the unit being money, and the purpose of the company is to make money, and that's how they are measured. All these three are then related to another money term, which is profit, net profit, return on investment, and cash flow. Let's check this from the operations point of view. What are we telling our people? Increase throughput. Shop floor. There are 4 orders in line. One is going to be sold today, the other one tomorrow, the other one day after, and the last one day after. What is the priority of operations? Very clear. The one that has to be sold today gets out of the shop floor first. The last one may increase my utilization because it's such a big order that I don't have to do any setup changes. We also know that operating expense is immune to setup changes. You can do 5-6 setup changes, it doesn't increase the operating expense. The impact setup change has is actually directly on the throughput. And if you refuse to change, you know that you will miss 1, 2, 3 throughputs, but the fourth one, which is supposed to go last, will go out first because of the utilization drive. Making sure that throughput is booked. The one that gets sold first is the throughput booked first. The priority on the shop floor gets set. Suddenly, changeover is not the prime factor. The conflict has been taken away. Let's look at investments next. How do we make decisions of investment based on throughput measurements. How do we make decisions in the cost world to purchase an equipment? And what would that decision be if it was the throughput world? In the cost world, the purchase decisions are based